Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 2024 HSE's annual science review Turbo Talk. This is the way that we use to launch our annual science review. And this year, we've got a special focus on the role that's played by our scientists and engineers in delivering forensic incident investigations and providing expert evidence, which is then used by the courts to secure justice. The review itself is available already on the HC website, so please do download it and read all of the case studies at your leisure. One of the things that we find really helpful is for the scientists, engineers and analysts to tell you the stories themselves. So it's a great pleasure to welcome some of my colleagues to today's event. These are the people who actually do all the hard work and deliver the important evidence that we as HSE need to deliver our own activities. So what they're going to do during the course of the next hour is to introduce their work, tell you about the ways that the information they generate is being used to protect people and places, and as a consequence helps people lead safer and healthier lives. As I've said, for each of the talks, there is a case study in the annual science review which contains all of the information, and there is, I think, links in the presentations for people to directly access those, so please do use those links as and when. We've got some QR codes which will flash up before your eyes as well, so please do take every opportunity to make sure that you're accessing the information that we've provided through our annual science review. Just to let you know as well that we're recording this event up to the Q&A session. It's going to be captioned afterwards and made available to anyone who wants to watch it later on. If you've got any questions, you'll hopefully notice a little sort of Q&A bubble at the top of your screen. And as the seminar progresses, if you could capture any questions that come to you as people are talking, then we'll run a brief Q&A session at the end for people to answer those questions direct after the speakers have presented. We'll prioritise the ones with the most likes, so if there is a question that sort of chimes with the one that you were going to ask, please do press the like button and it'll gradually move to the top of the screen. So as I say, it's a huge pleasure for me to start the seminar today. As I said, I'm Andrew Curran. I'm HSE's Chief Scientific Advisor and Director of Science. And we have 6 presentations for you today. They're all very short. We call them Turbo Talks, and they're all themed around our strategy, which is about protecting people and places. The first 2 then will cover the work under our strategic objective, which is to maintain Great Britain's record as one of the safest countries to work in. And I'm very pleased to introduce Alex Grimes, who's the technical team lead for our advanced imaging solutions. He was going to be joined today by his colleague Tristan Lang, but I suppose as a stark reminder that our people are involved in real live incidents, Tristan has actually been called to a serious incident to capture some of that photographic and imaging evidence as part of his day job. So unfortunately, Tristan's been called away to that incident and can't join us today. But Alex has very kindly stepped in and will talk about the work that Tristan was going to tell us about as well. So Alex, I think you're going to tell us about the work you've been doing to support HSE's forensic investigations, providing that robust scientific evidence that underpins our regulatory activities, starting with, sadly, what was an investigation into multiple fatalities following a wall collapse in a metal recycling plant. So Alex, thank you very much, and over to you.
Yep, so very quick introduction to me. So as Andrew said, my name's Alex. I'm based in the Advanced Imaging Solutions team here in Buxton. There's been a photographic team in HSE ever since 1974, when HSE was first sort of formed. It shows the importance of capturing photographic evidence as soon as possible after an incident, so we can capture all that evidence before the scene is disturbed and we lose any information. I'll do a quick look through some of the jobs we've worked on over the years, very briefly. All the big jobs you would have heard about: the Flixborough, King's Cross fire, Hillsborough disaster. So these are all the photos taken by HSE's photographers. Buntfield explosion, Alton Towers, obviously a big news story a few years ago, and a bit more recently, the pyrotechnics explosion at Lemaitre. So in recent years, we've moved on from just doing photos and video. We now incorporate lots of different technologies in our imaging offering. I'll start with laser scanning. That's kind of my field of expertise. On your screen now, you'll see the laser scan I did at the Smiler Ride in Alton Towers following the crash. So these laser scans produce a 3D map of the incident scene from which we can then bring back to Buxton and take measurements. We also now use a range of drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, to take photos and videos from areas we can't get to safely otherwise. This is a video from just over the hill here of the explosion at Bosley Wood Mill a few years ago. And as you can see, why we use drones, because there's no way we could get into these sites safely ourselves. High-speed video. So we use high-speed video a lot these days. We can capture sort of how locking mechanisms work, how explosions are triggered. We can record up to 1 million frames a second. This example on screen is just some detonating cord, which is then used to fire high explosives from quarries and mines. And this was filmed at 50,000 frames per second. Finally, 3D modelling. So I'll come on to a bit more about 3D modelling when I talk about the case study. Again, we're using this sort of technology more and more to produce information to a court to show how an incident occurred. And more, we're using CCTV footage. Pretty much every incident now will be captured by CCTV or a doorbell camera or a mobile phone. We can take this footage and examine it to try and identify the cause of an incident. In this case, if you look at the top right, you can see the start of an explosion. So we can use the footage to pinpoint where a fire started. I'll now move on to the two cases we've got in the annual science review. The first one, Andrew mentioned the Hawkswood metal recycling. So tragically, a wall collapsed, killing 5 people. It was being used to retain a big pile of metal ingots, which were at the recycling plant. So we went to the site, photographed the entire site, documented all the evidence, carried out a laser scan of the site, which is what you can see on screen now, which I can then take measurements of the bays, the size of the piles, the size of the concrete blocks, and provide all that information to the inspectors. And again, we used aerial imaging to capture the whole site, so we could also look at other structures on that site. The bosses from this company were sentenced to jail following the court case, and I think about £1.6 million in fines, which shows the scale of work we're doing. The second case study, this is a cardboard recycling facility in Wales, where the worker actually unfortunately got trapped within the machinery and got trapped and died. So we were asked to produce an animation of how the machinery worked, because often this machinery is quite complicated and we need to explain to a lay jury of how machines operate, how interlocks work, how safety mechanisms work. So we played this animation throughout the court case to show the layout of the machine, how it worked and how the individual became trapped. And again, the boss from this company was actually sentenced to 9 years in jail following the trial to show the severity of the health and safety failings at this particular premises. That was a very quick run through of what I've got here. I was trying to keep to Andrew's 5 minutes. Obviously, if you've got any questions, put them in the Q&A and I will hand back to Andrew now.
Thanks very much indeed, Alex. And as you can see on the screen there, we've got the QR code for you to scan to get to the right place in the annual science review to read a bit more detail about exactly what Alex, Tristan and the team have been doing to capture the photographic and video and CCTV footage evidence from those really horrendous accidents. Okay, so let's move on, and I'm very pleased to introduce now Chris Austin. Some of you may have met Chris during a training course, because he heads up our training and events team. And one of the things, of course, that we have gathered as a consequence of all of the work that we've done over the last 40 years, when we've been out to incidents to gather that forensic evidence, is a huge amount of knowledge on what you might do in an organisation if you were to go and investigate your own incident. So Chris is going to talk to us about how we've been sharing that knowledge on investigating incidents through our training courses. So Chris, thanks very much, and over to you.
Thanks, Andrew, and hello everybody. I'm delighted to be representing HSE's training team and also the wider network of colleagues right across the organisation who are involved in designing, developing and marketing our training offer, which I'm going to talk very quickly about this afternoon. Training is an important and proactive part of HSE's intervention toolbox. It helps us to share our science and research, combined with the unique regulatory insight that HSE's got, as Andrew mentioned, that we've gained over the last almost 50 years, and thousands of people and organisations train with us every year. Either in person at the HSE Science and Research Centre, where I'm sat here in Buxton, around the country, online in their own workplaces, or via a number of collaborations and partnerships that we've got. It helps us as a regulator to better understand the challenges that duty holders and industry face. So it really helps HSE to learn, and it of course helps our delegates to better understand and manage their own risks, improve their own health and safety systems, and innovate in a safe and healthy way. Now, specifically in terms of incident investigation, we use and share our knowledge in two ways, which I'll talk briefly about now. Firstly, we train organisations and individuals how to effectively investigate incidents using a number of recognised techniques, including those that our own HSE inspectors use. And we also draw on learning from investigations, some of the examples that Alex has just shared, to enhance our wider training offer. We've got about 45 to 50 individual topics that we use incident investigations and case studies to work through examples. The first of our specific incident investigation courses is actually jointly developed with our colleagues at NEBOSH. And it's the NEBOSH HSE Certificate in Introduction to Incident Investigation. It's one of 6 qualifications that we developed with NEBOSH, and as the name suggests, it's focused on providing a kind of grassroots foundation understanding of how to investigate an incident. Now, our iteration of these courses, so those that are delivered directly by us as HSE, are often mainly delivered by current and past HSE inspectors and/or specialists in accident investigation. Also offered by about 100 NEBOSH learning partners across the country and internationally. Covering right the way through from why investigate, who should investigate incidents, when should an investigation start and finish, and what's involved. So going through the steps, the immediate causes, what's caused the injury or the ill health, what's the underlying cause, and also the root cause of the failure. As you can see on the slide there, it goes through the 4 main stages of incident investigation: gathering information, analysing that information, using that to identify failings in control measures and future control measures, and then developing an action plan. Much of the information, much of the content from that course is taken from HSE guidance, HSG 245, but it also brings in a number of other techniques. Again, examples on the screen there: the 5 whys technique, fault tree analysis, cause and effect mapping, and the PEACE model for conducting interview investigation interviews. The beauty of this course is that learners also go through an assessment process, meaning that they do get an accredited NEBOSH qualification at the end of the course. The second of our programmes that we're pleased to offer is our 2-day Human Factors and Accident and Incident Investigation course, designed and delivered by human factors experts and psychologists, focuses more on the environmental, organisational and job factors and human and individual characteristics that affect health and safety, which is the diagram to the right of the screen there. Again, it draws on HSG 245 guidance, but also looks in a far more in-depth way at behavioural influences and how they can lead to error and how they can be managed to prevent future adverse events. Also linking back to HSC's HSG 48 guidance on behaviour change and influencing. Some of the models used, again, will look quite familiar to people. The domino model illustrating the combination of failings that can cause near misses and accidents, and reasons quite widely used. Swiss cheese model for accident causation, looking at gaps of different stages of the hierarchy of control. Again, we draw on lots of case studies from a number of high profile cases, including the Buncefield fire, Ladbroke Grove rail crash, Deepwater Horizon oil incident and the Smiler roller coaster crash, again, examples that Alex mentioned before. And then the second way in which we use our incident knowledge is to build and develop and illustrate our wider portfolio of courses. We've got, as I said before, about 45 course topics covering how organisations can control their risk, protect worker health, manage human factors, gaining regulatory insight from HSE, manage chemicals effectively and to innovate safely. So just to run quickly through the photographs that are on screen there and some of the examples that we use. The top left is one of my colleagues, Alan MacDonald, a senior HSE scientist, explaining the cause of a pressure vessel failure using evidence from a past incident investigation. The one on the right there is used for dangerous substances, explosive atmospheres, regulation training courses, our DESIR training, which focuses on dust explosions. Examples including the 2005 Bosley Wood Mill explosion, which I know Alex mentioned before and it's pictured there, and the 2008 Imperial Sugar Company explosion in the US. And then finally, the two bottom examples there is a piece of research work that HSE did a number of years ago, which was an acetylene explosion from equipment left in the back of a van, and we used that as part of, again, our DESIR gases and liquids training, and the final example being the Flixborough 1974 incident, which is still a really important case study given the seismic impact that had on safety regulation in the UK. I appreciate that that's been quite a quick whistle-stop tour of our training offer, but please do take a look at the QR code there to find out more. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Chris, and I'm very pleased to say that more than 20,000 of you have taken advantage of those training and events opportunities that we offer this last year. So really important that we're using all of the knowledge and information we've got to help improve health and safety wherever it's appropriate. So let's move on and move a bit further into our protecting people and places strategy. And the next strategic objective that we're going to have a look at is around enabling industry to innovate safely to prevent major incidents to support the move to net zero. And I'm again really pleased that Kirsty Ford is going to tell us about the work that she's been doing, this time paid for by Harbour Energy, which is looking at population density analysis for carbon dioxide pipeline routing. So Kirsty, thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you. So yes, I'm Kirsty Ford, a geospatial analyst from Science Division's Geospatial team, and I'm going to talk about population density analysis for carbon dioxide pipeline routing. So firstly, I just want to briefly cover some background. Within net zero, there are various projects focusing on carbon capture, usage and storage, and the use of pipelines to transport carbon dioxide for undersea storage is one approach. Others include transportation via ship or train. Within the UK, Harbour Energy is proposing to transport carbon dioxide through a high-pressure pipeline, and as part of their approach to managing safety, they commissioned risk specialists and geospatial analysts in HSE's Science Division to review their model. This was a multidisciplinary project requiring input from risk specialists and geospatial analysts, and this talk is focusing on the geospatial elements of the project. Harbour Energy's model was reviewed against the industry standard for pipelines, PD8010, which was achieved through the development of a parallel HSE model, in order to compare the approach and results with Harbour Energy's. As part of the review, I developed a component of the HSE model for calculating population density along the proposed routes. The first step was to obtain spatial data for the proposed pipeline routes, and then different analysis distances needed calculating. These are the distances away from the proposed pipeline within which population densities need to be considered, and they are defined by the industry standard. I then needed to calculate population density within the analysis distances, so I used HSE's National Population Database as the source of the population data. This is a tool that estimates populations in buildings in Great Britain by category, including populations more vulnerable to harm, such as people in hospitals, schools and care homes. It has previously been used in projects including flood risk assessment, analysis of COVID outbreaks in the workplace, and for assessing safety cases for major hazard sites. As I've mentioned, it has different population types which match nicely with the ones specified in the industry standard, and the table shows the ones within scope for the analysis. These were residential, workplaces, hospitals, care homes, schools, colleges, prisons, and campsites. The image on the left shows how population densities were calculated by considering the different population types. For example, the orange dots represent school pupils and the blue dots represent people in their homes. These were used to estimate populations within the analysis distances and to calculate the population density based on the area. This was done on a rolling basis of 1.6 kilometre sections to evaluate population density variation along the pipeline. The image on the right shows how the population density varies along the pipeline. The red and blue highlight sections with higher density, indicative of nearby towns or population centres, and where robust risk management needs to be put in place, such as the use of thicker walled pipe and diversions. The green shows areas with low population density, suggesting a lower risk. My take-home message is that one of HSE's strengths is bringing experts together and engaging with industry in order to carry out its mission of protecting people and places and in helping it deliver its strategic objectives. In this case, to enable industry to innovate safely to prevent major incidents, supporting the move towards net zero. The multidisciplinary approach applied to the review has leveraged expertise in risk assessment and geography, which has enabled Harbour Energy to understand the strengths and weaknesses of their approach and has identified areas for future consideration and development. HSE's model is automated, delivering consistent results, and it can be used for different scenarios, such as different substances. It is based around the industry standard and uses HSE's National Population Database, offering further flexibility and consistency. This helps provide trust in the process and leads to more informed decision-making. Thank you.
Welcome, John Saunders. John is our senior and principal scientist and technical team lead for exposure assessment and control. And we're now moving on to another strategic objective that we have around work-related ill health and reducing that so that workplaces can be much healthier than they perhaps are at the moment. And John is going to talk to us about the important role that ventilation plays in controlling exposures to nasty chemicals in the workplace, and using the important work that he's led evaluating exposure controls in the electrolytic nickel plating industry. So, John, I'm going to pass over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. As Andrew said, this presentation is the evaluation of exposure controls used in nickel plating. And in particular, I'm going to focus on the inhalation risk. So workers in the surface finishing industry are potentially exposed to a wide range of chemicals that can cause cancer, asthma and dermatitis. Now this includes soluble nickel compounds found in the plating solution. Exposure to these compounds occurs by inhalation, absorption through the skin, by ingestion, or a combination of all three routes. And as I said earlier, this presentation is going to focus on the inhalation risk and the controls required. So how does exposure take place? Well, during the plating process, the articles to be plated are immersed in the solution, which is the black liquid you can see in the tank on the left. However, to get a good plating quality, that liquid has to be constantly mixed, and that refreshes the nickel ions at the surface of the articles to be plated. Poor mixing essentially results in poor plating quality. The mixing is commonly done by introducing air into the base of the tank, and as it bubbles through, it induces mixing. However, as the air bubbles reach the surface, they pop, and that releases a fine mist, and it's inhalation of that fine mist that can cause health issues, including cancer. There's a range of controls that can be applied, but at the time of this research, there's no clear guidance on what's the most effective and cost effective as well. And that's the aim of this work. So how did we evaluate the controls? Well, unfortunately, we couldn't go out into industry to do this. There's just too many variables to try and control. So what we did is we set up a small nickel plating facility, and that was set up in a test room at the HSE Science and Research Centre. And you can see a picture of that on the left. To collect the nickel compound that was emitted as the fine mist from the tank, we had a sampling hood placed above, which is the silver hood you can see on the left. And then we carried out sampling in the ducting from that hood and analysed that chemically. And then we worked out the efficacy of the different control measures applied by comparing it to the baseline condition. The baseline condition was the air agitation with no controls present. We evaluated 6 different controls. The first one was local exhaust ventilation, so that's air extraction, usually at the rear of the tank through slots, sometimes referred to as lip extraction. Eductors, now that was slightly different in that this replaced the air agitation system altogether and was a pumped circulation that mixed a solution. Croffles was the third one. This was placed on these balls were essentially like ping pong balls placed on the surface of the liquid, covers the liquid surface and reduces the open effective area. Fourth one was the actual solution fill level, just how full the tank was, and that's the distance between the top of the liquid surface and the top of the tank. Fifth one was the air agitation rate itself, and we optimised this, but while still ensuring good plating quality in an aim to reduce the emission. And the final one was the surface tension of the solution, and we adjusted that with a chemical additive within the manufacturer's specification. All of these potential control measures reduce the exposure risk. However, the 2 standout ones were LEV and eductors. And LEV, you can see the slots on the left, that's where the extraction took place. And on the right, you can see the eductors as those yellow funnels at the bottom of the tank. So we're looking into the tank there. No moving parts, and they just induce a mixing of the solution. Both the LEV and the eductors were equally effective, very effective in fact, greater than 98% reduction in the nickel mist. However, considering the hierarchy of controls, the eductors were the preferred control method. And this is because LEV doesn't actually reduce the amount of nickel emitted. Yes, it controls it at source and extracts it before the nickel mist can reach the worker's breathing zone, but any deterioration in the LEV flow rate, or if it fails, it results in a loss of control, which results in a potential exposure to the workers. Eductors, on the other hand, will virtually eliminate the production of the mist in the first place, and because they are part of the plating process, they replace the air agitation system. They are required for the process to continue. If the eductors were to fail, the process would stop. And the icing on the cake really was the eductors have potential saving costs, both capital, and that's capital for retrofitting and for new systems, and also indicates that running and maintenance costs are a lot cheaper with eductors compared to LEV systems. Thank you very much. There is our research report available on this if you're interested, if you just head to the HSE website. Thank you very much.
QR code is there for people to scan to get the example in the review itself. Okay, well, hopefully the IT issues have been resolved. If I could just remind our speakers to come out of their presentation when they've finished, that might help us going forward. We're going to move on now to another area of our strategy, which is about how we increase and maintain trust to ensure that people feel safe where they live, where they work, and in their environment. And we're going to start with some work that's been looking at our long-term monitoring of the health of pesticide workers. This is a fantastic piece of work that's been running for a long time now. And Gillian Nichols is going to tell us a little bit about what we've learned monitoring the health of registered pesticide workers using the PIPA study. So I can see your slides. Hopefully our attendees can see your slides. Gillian, fingers crossed, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So today I'm going to be talking to you about one of HSE's long-term volunteer studies that looks at the health of people who use pesticides as part of their work. So this study is called the Prospective Investigation of Pesticide Applicators Health Study, and this is something that I'm not going to say again during the presentation. Instead, I shall refer to it as a PIPA study throughout. And I am giving this presentation today, but this is very much on behalf of a large study team who work very hard to keep the study running. So pesticides are used to control pests, weeds and diseases, and examples of these include insecticides, fungicides and herbicides. Now, before a pesticide can be used, sold, supplied or stored in the UK, it must be authorised by HSE as the national regulator. And in this, HSE's aim is to ensure that pesticides do not harm human health or have any unacceptable effects on the environment. To help monitor this, HSE set up the PIPA study in 2013, and its aim was to monitor the long-term health of people who use pesticides as part of their job. We wanted to collect information about their past pesticide use as well as current use, about other factors that could affect health such as diet, exercise levels and smoking. We wanted to be able to get information directly from them about their health, but also linked to National Health Service central registers so we can get information about health through those routes as well. We wanted to keep participants actively engaged in the study. This enables us to keep information up to date, but also helps to maintain their interest and desire to continue in the study into the future. And we also wanted the study to be a national resource to enable collaborative research, but also so that we can conduct sub-studies in the future if the research question arose that needed them. So since the study started in 2013, we've recruited over 6,000 people who use pesticides as part of their work, and about 4,500 are active participants, and we're able to contact each year with questionnaires. We've maintained our participation numbers in the study through ongoing recruitment, but also due to the active engagement in terms of keeping regular contact, producing annual newsletters for participants, attending annual shows such as the Cereals Arable event, and also maintaining a strong study identity. And quite a few participants refer to us as the green questionnaire that comes through every year. Maintaining this regular contact means that we're able to be responsive to HSE priorities as they arise, and an example of this was in 2018 when we sent out a respiratory questionnaire, and in this we found that levels of doctor diagnosed asthma were similar to the general population, but there were high levels of self-reported symptoms, and this suggests that there may be underdiagnosis of asthma in this population. We also wanted the study to be a national resource, and we are a current member of the Agrico Consortium, which consists of 29 agricultural studies across the world like PIPA, and they aim to support and maintain collaboration and data sharing. Through this, we have contributed to analyses of respiratory diseases among agricultural workers and also analysis of neurological disease among farmers. PIPA has also contributed to the IMPRESS project, which is an international collaboration of 5 studies from 4 countries, which included PIPA. Its aim was to get a better understanding of the methods used to gather information on pesticide use in studies like PIPA, and this involved repeated questionnaires that we previously used, but also helped to recruit the IMPRESS project in order to investigate the use of urinary biomarkers. So the PIPA study has been running for just over 10 years now, and it is arguably one of the most important pesticide monitoring activities carried out in the UK. This type of work, a volunteer study, really is essential to monitor pesticide users' health for any emerging evidence that pesticide exposures may have resulted in harm. And we've managed to establish a framework under which we can collect and analyse valuable information on pesticide users' work and health, and we can be responsive to HSE priorities as they arise. It also helps to engage with pesticide users, and it helps to raise awareness in terms of adopting good practice to help reduce potential pesticide exposure. So thank you for listening today, and if you want to find out any more information about this case study, you can do so at the Annual Science Review online. Thank you very much.
Again, great pleasure to welcome another colleague, Sinan Faliolara, who is a Senior Insight and Design Service Design Manager at our new Building Safety Regulator. And clearly, as the new Building Safety Regulator, we have new responsibility to deliver, particularly when it comes to maintaining trust to ensure that people feel safe where they live. So Sinan's going to talk to us about some of the work he's been doing to help put residents at the heart of the new Building Safety Regulator. So Sinan, I've got my fingers, toes and anything else to hand crossed, and I'll hand over to you. I can see your first slide. Hopefully I'll be able to see the subsequent slides. So over to you. Thank you.
Many thanks, Andrew. So good afternoon all. I'm Sinan. I'm part of Health and Safety Executive's Insight and Service Design team. And in the next 5 minutes, I'll talk about a research program we conducted among the residents of high-rise buildings. So this research eventually became one of the tools utilized by the new Building Safety Regulator to understand this group's characteristics and putting them at the heart of its design and operations. So I would like to start with giving you a bit of a brief context. So government conducted an independent review on building regulations and fire safety, and that was following a large residential fire at Grenfell Tower, which happened back in 2017. And unfortunately, that tragedy costed many lives. So in response to one of the recommendations in the review, Health and Safety Executive was tasked with establishing the new Building Safety Regulator, and that was to ensure that such tragedies would not happen again. And on the screen here, you see a quote from the review, and it talks about the importance of involving residents in discussions about their own safety and its significance on rebuilding the public trust. I believe this quote highlights the importance of understanding and involving this group when setting up the new regulator. Now I'd like to move on to what we did and why we did it. So our research study involved a survey with almost 10,000 residents across England, and that was complemented by a qualitative research to provide depth to our survey findings. We also conducted a couple of follow-up studies with residents who reported to have a disability, also among those who do not speak English well or who don't speak English at all. And the rationale behind conducting this research program was, first of all, providing an in-depth understanding for the Building Safety Regulator on residents' characteristics, their experiences of living in a high-rise building, their attitudes towards safety, and also to understand what makes residents feel safe. So this supported the regulator to involve residents' voice in its decisions across policy, strategy, operations and communications. And eventually, it contributed in achieving its aim of ensuring that residents are safe and they feel safe in their homes. So the study covered many different areas, but here I just picked 3 key findings for you. First one is residents' interpretation and the understanding of the building safety, which is much wider than how we define it. At the Building Safety Regulator, we define building safety within the scope of fire safety and structural integrity. But when you talk to residents, it also includes the issues that is affecting them on a day-to-day basis. And the second point here is very much similar to the first one. So there are many factors that may promote the feeling of safety among residents, but among all, the most important one is residents' confidence on their building management's ability to address their issues. And it's not only viral structural safety issues, but all the issues residents might be experiencing. I believe these findings are key in terms of managing residents' expectations when we're setting up the new regulator, as well as in our efforts in rebuilding the public trust. I believe it also highlights the importance of joint actions with other regulators who are active in that space and help industry to get up to speed in all aspects of their engagement with the residents. And the final point is about inclusivity. Our studies show that residents with a disability or those who do not speak English well, they go through similar issues as everyone else. But however, the effects of those issues on those residents is much more heightened due to their vulnerable characteristics. So although the needs of those groups may seem unique, there are solutions and support initiatives with the potential to meet the needs of all residents, including those who are more vulnerable. So in this last slide, I would like to touch upon a few things which we believe supported the application of this study. First one is collaboration. So we collaborated with stakeholders throughout all phases of this research program, that is from the design to dissemination. This ensured that the study stayed relevant, it kept the application in focus for the users of the findings. And eventually, the findings were applied to communication campaigns, guidance and support initiatives, which you see some of the images of this on the right-hand side of the slide. And the second one is dissemination. We didn't keep the findings of this study as an internal piece of work, but we presented the findings to colleagues within Health and Safety Executive, to our colleagues in other government departments, as well as committees and groups, including industry representatives. And we know that these engagement activities initiated useful conversations between the decision makers. And finally, I would like to mention the importance of thinking through the lens of inclusivity. What I mean by that is that when we disseminated the findings, those additional studies we conducted were not necessarily presented as an add-on, but they were very much at the center of our dissemination efforts. And we think this encouraged a certain way of thinking that will be inclusive of the needs of all residents. So many thanks for listening. That's all I wanted to say about this research program. More information is available in this year's annual science review. Thank you very much.